Some stories are born in silence. Some are too heavy to tell, until the heart can no longer carry them. This is one of those stories, a journey through pain, rejection, and survival, but also a journey of finding a voice after 46 years. Tonight, you will hear not just memories, but a truth that was hidden for decades. This is The Orphan's Diary. This is the letter I could not write for 46 years. It is not a letter born out of revenge, nor a cry of bitterness. It is the story of a life lived in the silence you left behind, a silence that grew like a shadow and shaped every corner of who I became. And now, finally, I am ready to fill that silence with my own words. I was born on a cold January morning in 1978. My mother was alone when she brought me into the world, alone but unbroken. Her strength, I would later learn, was the first inheritance she gave me. While she labored through the pain of birth, you were absent. You had already made your choice, a choice sealed in ink with the stroke of your pen. A letter to her father, denying me before I had even taken my first breath. From the very beginning, I was unwanted. Even my own grandmother, who by custom should have given me her name, refused. I was her first granddaughter, but to her, I was only a reminder of shame, a child born out of wedlock. Her verdict was cruel and swift. She cast my pregnant mother out of her home. Homeless and carrying me in her womb, my mother sought refuge with my great-grandmother in the city. That was my welcome into the world. Rejection, shame, and exile. When I was only a year old, life delivered its first cruel twist. My mother, desperate to earn a living, left me with the same grandmother who had once cast us out. She hoped that maybe time had softened her mother's heart. It had not. For 1 month, I stayed in that cold house, my presence tolerated but never embraced. Then the phone call came. Her voice on the other end was like a blade. "I'm sure you have your first paycheck. Come take your child, or I'll mail her to you." I was not a baby to be loved. I was a parcel to be returned, a burden to be passed from hand to unwilling hand. My mother came for me, of course. She always did what she could, even when the world gave her so little. For a while, we lived alone together in the city. Those days shimmer in my memory like sunlight on water, good food, new dresses, and toys that made me feel, if only briefly, like a wanted child. But even in those bright moments, I could feel the shadow waiting for its chance to return. The shadow took the form of a man, my stepfather. His arrival was like the closing of a door, shutting me out of the fragile home I had built with my mother. Suddenly, I was no longer welcome. The lie I was told was simple. Your grandmother is lonely. You must go live with her. The truth was harsher. My stepfather did not want me. In my grandmother's village, childhood ended before it had even begun. At 6, I was standing on a stool to stir pots of boiling food. At 7, I bent over icy basins, washing clothes until my small hands cracked and bled. My allowance was sent, but it disappeared into other hands before it ever reached me. I learned early what it meant to be invisible. And when my sister was born, the little light I still carried dimmed even further. I faded into the background of my own family, becoming little more than a ghost, a reminder of something unwanted. One morning, when I was 8, my body gave in before my spirit did. I had been battling bronchitis, my lungs burning with every breath, and yet I was expected to wake at a.m. for chores in the biting mountain air. My slippers were thin, my dress worn, and the fog was so thick you could barely see your own hand. That morning, I decided to run, not out of rebellion, but out of desperation. Through the tea plantations I walked, my small feet carrying me towards anything that wasn't this endless cycle of neglect. I boarded one bus, then another, then a third. No one asked questions. I was too quiet, too invisible. Until a kind woman noticed me. She saw the mud on my dress, the trembling of my body, the emptiness in my eyes. She guided me safely to my mother's shop. That moment still lingers with me like a fragile miracle. And sometimes I wonder, if you had been there, Father, would I have ever needed to run? I saw you once, Father. It was during a school fundraiser. The hall was decorated with paper streamers, the smell of dust and chalk mixing with the sweetness of cheap pastries. You were there as a guest of honor, a man of importance. I knew it was you. Children have a strange certainty about such things. My grandmother later confirmed it with a shrug, as if naming you meant nothing. That was your father. I watched you from across the room. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would break through my chest. I waited for you to notice me, to meet my eyes, to see me, but you didn't. You looked right through me. You turned your face as though I were a stranger, a shadow. You didn't even look back. That day, something inside me hardened. To survive, I invented another father. In my mind, he was tall, handsome, an Egyptian man who had loved my mother but had been forced to leave. He sent money for me, I told myself, and one day he would return. He was kind, gentle, and nothing like the man who had looked straight through me. The instability of my life left me exposed, fragile in a world that showed me no mercy. In that silence where a father's voice should have been, darker things entered. I was a child, and yet I endured moments of assault, moments no child should even know exist. Adults silenced me, not to protect me, but to protect themselves from shame, from scandal, from whispers in the village. The shame became mine to carry. It was a heavy coat draped over my small shoulders, and it grew heavier each year. School faded from my reach, not because I lacked intelligence, but because the weight of silence crushed my spirit. By my late teens, I was already fending for myself. I joined a dance group, moving my body to music while my heart felt hollow. At 18, I entered a marriage that became another prison, lasting 20 long years. The walls of that house echoed with abuse, not love. It was the same chaos of my childhood, only grown larger. But I survived. One day, I found the courage to walk away, to gather my children in my arms and step out of the darkness I had called home. Survival had been my companion since birth, and once again, it carried me forward. I raised my children alone. I poured into them the love I had always craved. Still, the echoes of abandonment did not disappear. They followed me, whispering in moments of loneliness, shaping the way I saw myself. And so, after 46 years, I came searching for you. Not the man in the big hat, not the ghost who looked through me, but the father whose absence had defined me. I wanted answers. I wanted to stand before you and ask, why? The answer I received was shallow, an excuse dressed as reason. And yet, it didn't matter, because by then I had learned something. The truth I sought was never in your words. It was in the life I had survived. Now I am 47. I am a mother of 3. I am still struggling financially, emotionally, spiritually. The consequences of your absence echo into the next generation. My children are growing up without the grandfather they could have had. That empty chair at the table, it still speaks. But here is the truth I hold now. I choose to forgive you, not because you earned it, you did not, but because I deserve peace. Forgiveness is not a gift to you. It is a gift I give to myself. It is the hardest work I have ever done, and it is not finished. Every day, I must choose it again, and every day, I remind myself that my story does not end in pain. It continues in resilience, in courage, in the love I pour into my children, in the hope that tomorrow can be brighter. So this is the letter I could not write for 46 years, and I ended not with bitterness, but with strength. Because even when the world told me I was unwanted, I survived. Even when I was invisible, I endured. Even when I was abandoned, I kept walking. And now, I stand scarred but unbroken. Your absence did not destroy me. It shaped me into a woman who knows her worth, who chooses love, who chooses life. And in the quiet after the storm, I finally hear my own voice, clear, steady, and full of hope. If this story moved you, I invite you to subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories like this. And don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. Your feelings matter, and your voice deserves to be heard.